is Marvin Robinson, and what's your stake is in the Quindaro ruins?
Okay. I was gonna say we always try to stop guests and visitors at the John Brown Memorial because a lot of people don't understand what John Brown's role was in the advent of freedom. And he actually was, prior to the American Civil War, he brought in, he had pseudonyms or different names, but he would have shotguns shipped to him. But on top of them were Bibles. So people thought he was a Bible belter.
Okay.
But he would teach the African fugitives that had escaped through Missouri, but mostly through Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas to aim ready fire because he knew that freedom would come and would not come without being prepared.
Right.
So he taught them before they were allowed to join the American Union Army.
Wow. Okay.
So we have the first John Brown Memorial that was erected in 1911.
Just go a little closer.
They started in 1909 or late 1908, and there was no founder in the United States that was willing to do a memorial for John Brown. They had to send pleas all out everywhere, and they found one in Korea, Italy, where Michelangelo done his stonework. Okay. And that's where this was imported from. He was supposed to have a shotgun with a scroll underneath it. But by the time it came through customs, they had cut off the shotgun.
You can see that.
And he was defaced many times.
Right. They vandalized this regularly.
They used to, when we were kids, we used to come out here through the Prince of Gates summer youth program through their character building, and they took us on all these tours. And he was down the street by a water tower in a cage, in a fence.
Wow.
Because the people would come and shoot him.
This particular statue was.
Mr. Ernest Gayton Sr., he died in 1991 when he was 91 years old. He said, our people should always come and pay homage to the martyr from being a visionary if he wasn't having it.
Right, right. So there's a lot of history in this area, and we're going to talk about that a little more. But we also, just in the background there was one time
Bryan Butler Kitchen Nursing Home.
A nursing home?
Yes,
okay.
The only owned, operated Black nursing home in the state of Kansas.
Okay.
And later was owned by a guy who was a pharmacist and other Black physicians here in Kansas City. Okay. And it went up to $5,000 a month for utilities.
Wow.
And that wouldn't include the staff or the protocols and prescriptions and everything. And it was cost prohibitive. And it was bought by some other people, and they demolished it back last summer of 2020.
Mama. And prior to the nursing home, what was present on the grounds?
Prior to the nursing home was Quindaro Freedmen's University.
Okay.
These people were so gung-ho and confident. You know, Charles Langston was the first president for Quindaro Freedmen's University. And a lot of people don't know who he was. He was a graduate of Oberlin College, mixed race out of Ohio. Okay. And he and the other Union Army people pulled their money together and opened up Quindaro Freedmen's University because they were saying we're going to have a Freedmen's Bureau or Freedmen's Institution. This was in February of 1865, and Freedmen's Bureau didn't open up until like April of 1865. So they were ahead of their time on so many different points. But later on, one of his daughters gave birth to somebody named Langston Hughes. And when Langston Hughes' mother died, because the climate of racism was so horrible, their family made her be buried without a marker. Wow. And she's buried over in Missouri somewhere. Really? Kansas, Missouri. Okay. Because it was fake people coming.
Okay. Okay. Got some guests over here pulling up kind of fast. So let's take a walk down to Quindaro to the overhang over here and just talk about briefly the history of Quindaro. I think this is a very important discussion to have. Just a little research I did. Quindaro is a Wyandotte word, right? That's supposed to mean bundle of sticks, which is suggestive of strength and unity and strength in numbers. And so talk about the early community of Quindaro from, I know, was Quindaro Nancy and her husband, I forgot.
Nancy Brown,
yes, sir. And her Mr.
Actually, this was the Wyandotte Reserve.
This is a whole Wyandotte Indian, Native American Reserve.
Yeah. Okay. Before side of Ohio, due to the westward, due to the white
Andrew Jackson.
I'm not sure. Don't get me on the names. Okay. But due to the population boom in Ohio, they needed the Indian removal plan in place. So they threw them basically out of Wyandotte, Ohio, and told them anywhere in Kansas. And so they picked first over there by the Kansas River.
Okay.
But they decided that was too easy. It made them like city targets because they knew that the French Canadian Wyandotte Indians had 780 acres.
Okay.
And the New England Immigrant Society abolitionists had money. And they knew that they would be able to get help from the African fugitives on their journey to freedom. So you had, and the women's suffrage movement.
Okay.
So you had this, according to the Interior Department, in their evaluation of the site, unduplicated, priceless, and irreplaceable Americana at its finest.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when I do tours or presentations, I always say that when Dr. King talked about having had a dream, it had already manifested.
Wow.
In the centermost part of the country.
Right here.
Yes.
So Quindaro was a Black Wall Street before Black Wall Street was really known in like Greenwood, Oklahoma, huh?
More than that.
More than that.
Because you didn't have necessarily the commerce. But what you had was the ingenuity of education and some of the finest minds who were being trained in a very few schools that allowed Black African Americans to go to.
Okay.
Come in here and teach the basics. Their ideal of Quindale Freeman's University, kindergarten all the way through 8th and 12th grade.
Okay.
And later with Western University, pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
It was almost like a Twilight Zone arrangement because a lot of the females that went to the schools, the girls.
Let me get a moment. Let me get these flags for a moment. Just to let the viewers see, you got the American flag.
Yeah, they should have, instead of the red, black, and green. That's cool or nice, but we should have the first Kansas colored and the second Kansas colored. Union Army flags here, the first to serve and first to die in the American Civil War.
Okay.
Because they had tons of flag posts left over from some other projects out of the Legends, and they chose to put the red, black, and green.
Okay.
Which doesn't fit the timeline. And
interesting, because that's Marcus Garvey, of course, so that's a little bit later down the road. Interesting.
Like we try to tell them, we can keep the red, black, and green, so everybody is familiar with it. Yeah. But at least honor the first and second Kansas color.
Interesting. These are those who preserved and protected the freedoms of our ancestors during the Civil War time.
Right. And right over here was the girls' dormitory for.
Let's take a look.
Quindale Freeman's University.
Okay.
So it became Western University, and then they had the boys' dormitory, and then the classrooms. And further over, when you've been over to the brewery, that was like music hall.
Okay.
And but there at the girls' dormitory, when they started shutting down the campus and everything in 1943.
Okay.
I have a dental problem, so don't do real close.
Oh no, I'm on the just getting it closer to.
Okay, yeah, and it became Douglas Hospital.
Okay.
Where if you were Black and wanted to go to the hospital to have a baby, this was the place to be. Otherwise, if you wanted to have your child and give birth at a hospital, you could go to the University of Kansas Medical Center, but you had to go through the alley.
Okay.
And I forget the name of the particular building, but they had separate locations for the Black women to come and give birth.
Okay.
Out of KU, but people could come right here, and you had doctors from all over Fisk and Harry that had practices here in Kansas City, Wyandotte County, and also staff here at the Douglas Hospital.
Okay, so we got a couple of visuals to show here. Quindaro, and of course, again, that's a Wyandotte word, but this is one of the first Black communities in a free state that was established just prior to the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Very powerful, very powerful. So talk about the history of that as relates to Kansas and freedom for Black Americans as relates to that. Yeah.
So Okay, so we're gonna go through the historical aspects. Okay,
Just with the, Missouri just across the river,
Yes.
and how this is impacted in terms of Kansas
Yes.
being a free state, all that good stuff.
Okay, so you have the Missouri Compromise, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Louisiana Purchase prior to. And so the site fits into all these various timelines, and then it goes into the American Civil War and the Exodus period, to train people that went to Western University. I was trying to say earlier, the females that went to the school usually studied nursing, education, or music.
Okay.
And the men studied electricity, ROTC, music, and carpentry.
Wow.
So, in some of the materials of the National Archives Records Administration, they said it's the finest military training institution west of the Mississippi River of the color. They prepared for war, and I didn't even know until I really was trying to help you and Casey when they were doing a play that the African population of men in the United States served in the American Revolutionary War, but they played music. It was done with theater. They had a whole concert. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
And so the same was true with this. They prepared music, and not so much for the American Civil War, but for World War I and II and so forth. And went on to do great things with some of the historic Black colleges and universities across the country. And some of the people who have gone on to do have won Emmys, and I can't say Charlie Bird Parker had anything to do with the site itself, but tons of others did.
He was influenced by it, to say the least.
Right, and like the lady that used to let me get my articles in the cover, said people didn't want to be bothered with Charlie Bird Parker. He was considered like an outcast because he wouldn't go do something serious. Wow. But what he wanted to do, he would have to go downtown on 12th Street and on Prospect and 18th and Vine and play, until he could build up his repertoire. But he was over here in Wyandotte County. Wow. And one of the brilliant things from my understanding from his family, they were able to secure all of his copyrights of his
masters and everything.
Yes,
that's powerful.
So whether you like his brand of music or not, he didn't just pursue the business art of it. His people encircled him with the
culture,
the financing to secure it into the future. And so I'm so nervous and hyped about the interview because we just commemorated the 100th anniversary, May the 8th, of different people having tried to preserve the site with historic federal designation, May the 8th of 1921. And you can look and see that the brush is just taken on the site. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. Save America's Treasures from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, National Commemorative Sites, a few other designations that escape my mind right this second, but the lack of priority from the decision makers is quite tragic.
It's unfortunate. Now, one thing that you have been involved with is the preservation of these grounds, right?
Yes.
And how long have you been at that particular matter? Since when did you really come? When did Quindaro come to you? When did you respond?
I started with the project in May of 1987 when I read an article. When I came home, and
you're a veteran, correct?
Right, Navy vet. And when I came home and dropped out of college for the second time at Temple, I would come to some of the meetings and the rallies, and people donate money for the Legal Defense Fund. Grover Hankins is his name, the lawyer that Boston Daniels, the second African American chief of police, had used his money in his retirement to secure a lawyer. Okay. And he got Grover Hankins, and Grover Hankins carried the case all the way to the Kansas State Supreme Court, and they lost. And he was instantly hired in that process to be the general counsel for the NAACP National Office.
Interesting.
And he died a couple of years ago. And in his interviews with the University of Texas, whatever it is, the Texas State Historic Society, he claims that out of all the work that he did with environmental justice and his legal career with the NAACP, that the Quindaro ruins was his finest work.
Wow.
And so to have someone reach that level and, you know, acknowledge. And so, you know, I try to tell the different ones at the interior department, we need to have them and their people go there and retrieve copies of that material to send it to the other people in the interior department so they can, because one of the things we have to prove is that the site has more interest to people outside of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, the greater Kansas City area.
Okay.
But we have 206 acres here
Okay.
of
historic nature
of foundations of a city that helped to carve freedom. And then, you know, we got co-opted so many different times. This one guy, he had retired from the Kansas City Star and he worked for FDIC in the public affairs. And he came over, you know, he was going in the room and say who you are in the meeting. He's like, I'm working on Quindaro and I did something about the music people. So I told him, you know, we talked. And as we tried to collaborate, he was changing the narrative. He wanted to make it appear that once people got to Quindaro, they were lighting the campfire and playing a banjo and the harmonica and dancing. And there was never that kind of thing.
So he was making it more minstrelish.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Like a minstrel show. Like, you know, it was more, it wasn't as cultural and as focused as it was. It was more just entertainment based, seemingly what you're saying.
Yeah, it was very degrading. I was just like, you know, even though that happened much later during the West University era, Nora Hope, who she went to school here. She's from Kansas City. Her father was a preacher. She got her master's at the University of Chicago, and she was the first female, black or white, to earn a master's degree in music composition. And again, she had all of her stuff copywritten and everything. Yeah. And she traveled the world and had 4 or 5 marriages and was like close friends to, she just escaped. She's St. Louis, Josephine Baker.
Okay.
So when she would go there, Josephine Baker would reschedule her schedule so they could go and travel and perform and different, you know. And so there's just so many dynamics and the ability or inability to translate the area's importance and culture has been overwhelming because people, you know, have come to the project and said that they wanted to help, and so what can we do to, you know, and the next thing I know, they came up with some crazy stuff.
Try to change the whole scope of,
you know, we want to do job creation for people in the area who are either chronically unemployed or underemployed, Black, African, American, Indigenous people of both Kansas City, Wyandotte County, and Jackson County, Missouri, because that's the core group.
Right.
And then we want to also do entrepreneurship development training so that, just like I see the logo material that I'm looking at on the internet, and then this right here that I'm looking at, so that people can make their arts and crafts and turn that money into the local economy. And if they want to donate back to the area, fine or not, but at least be it, you know, otherwise we, you know, And I've had Black people tell me in different, as recent as like in their late 20s up to 60, that they don't care nothing about job creation for the people in the Black community, and I've said it as much in some meetings. And also, they don't get nothing about entrepreneurship development that would include the African American people. I was like, well, okay, there's one guy who used to let me go to a lot of these meetings, Norman Justice, who was a state representative, a big person with the UAW 31, the General Motors people, and so forth. He was like, unless you take and spill these things out loud in all discussions, then they just roll over our people. That's why we're in the predicament we are. So I'm like, okay, we got to keep saying that we have to have entrepreneurship development training, and we have to keep saying that we need the employment opportunities so that because this 206 acres. When I first came down here, the people they were saying, well, not the first time, but they said it was the Pompeii of Kansas.
Pompeii of Kansas.
And so I was just like, they said it's the Pompeii, the State Historic Society saying that is indeed the Pompeii of Kansas, but don't tell that damn Marvin Robinson. I was like, and I was just like, a little spider, something. And I was like, so what is Pompeii? You know, Church of God in Christ, Pompeii. I think we've had that discussion before. I thought it was the olive oil that they use when you're in the prayer line. And, you know, then I was like, well, that's not it. So then I had to tell the library people to tell me. So then they went on to show me some more material because this was before Google, before the internet. And so it was a lost city, and there are lost cities along the Missouri River.
That's the volcano that covered the city.
Right. There are lost cities all along the state of Kansas, Troy, Atlantis, but they aren't connected to the Underground Railroad. And underneath this side here are going to be, we have, there are ancient Indian cooking flint tent tools that date 7,000 to 9,000 years.
Wow.
And after we stopped the dump in federal court, that's the Kansas State Supreme Court, and then we protested weekly during spring through mid-fall at different government agencies. Okay. You know, we were pop up.
Right. Protest, like, you're not gonna do this to this.
And then I have my weekly articles in the KUAW paper, and then we were able to get the city. We raised so much sand with, you know, and petitions and protests, so we were able to get the city to not renew their permits. To do dumping, to the construction, because everything had been approved by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Senator, former Senator Bob Doe, his wife had been the chief of staff to Nancy Reagan, and she got appointed to the Secretary of Transportation to send all these packets and everything and all that.
Right.
And she was one of the people that responded. Was like, her staff was like, don't give our name, but we're very special towards anything in Kansas. And we don't know what we can do. So they're going to build a $15 to $20 million access road. When we were coming over here they were going to build a $15 to $20 million access road because we were raising hell about they were going to have 440 inbound dump trucks on a daily basis and 440 outbound. And, you know, Quindale Elementary School's right up here, and then you got Northwest Middle School. Right. And we were trying to say, if you put students in front of trash trucks every day, then they'll see imaging the subliminal seduction of trash is that, you know, trash. And plus our history can't be compromised for that. So anyway, her staff didn't bother to say what they were going to do, but then they sent a letter, a copy of the letter to the National Advisory Council for Historic Preservation, and said that the Secretary of Transportation understands the complexities with Quindale, but she also reminds the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation that the federal government held air rights. And so if they were going to take and build this access road, not on the watch of Elizabeth Doe being the Secretary of Transportation. Wow. So they were crippled at that end. That's and then good. We were doing our marching.
Now, what year was that?
I want to say 89, 90. Yeah. And
during the Reagan administration.
Yeah. You know, we've had to work with, you know, every administration that came along. But then we were able to, BFI got mad because the city wouldn't renew their landfill, and they were complaining about they were using private money to build this road. People don't understand that BFI was a privately held waste disposal giant, and they were on the New York Stock Exchange. They were international investors, and so they sued the city for $52 million in federal court. And then the Kansas, we used to have a daily paper called the Kansas, and people was blaming the protest efforts and petition people who were just gibbering idiots that if the city lost this precious, much needed toxic waste dump and had to pay out all their money, they need to, the people in the community need to blame the protesters for meddling and things that they didn't even have the skills for. Because we would go to hearings, they would have like rows of engineers and lawyers from all over the country, of all races. And here we were just
common citizens, fighting for the history of our people. I mean, it's a huge legacy here. And I'm glad you brought up the entrepreneurship. You brought up, this business,
And what I want to say about the jobs, but that wasn't even my idea. But when I came down here and they said it was the Pompey of Kansas, TV people, camera, helicopters and all that. And so, then we was a different kind of climate then. We had a bunch of people who lived in people who were trying to come to our local. We had people that was trying to come to our meetings, black and white, and they were trying to find the Vernon Center. They didn't know nothing about the area, and they was like, we're kind of scared. Can we have a meeting someplace else? I was like, they said people keep rushing up on us trying to sell us crack. So I was like, oh my God, so people just trying to bring in KU. And so I was like, how do I handle this? And Ted Apple had a program on it, and they were talking about how you have to respect the people that are the village natives in places throughout Africa and South America. You have to talk, they call themselves technicals. You have to go through them in order to have permission. Right. So I said,
you got to go through the technicals.
So we need to figure out, we need to go through them and ask for permission for the guests to come. So then I did a flyer up, and I talked to a person who later became a friend. And I was just like, okay, so y'all running us, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, that's my damn work.
Right.
Hey, hey, you doing your, I got to make my money.
Wow.
That's what I do. And I was just like, well,
That's deep.
so then what I was trying to say, and it becomes complicated because if you don't communicate it all out, then people think, well, you just think, like one lady, when I was talking, we need job creation, entrepreneurship development for people that are Black, indigenous to the both cities to help cut down on crime, violence, and senseless crime.
Right.
She was like, well, it is true. You want everything your way. I was like, no, I don't think that. But the guy had told me, he said, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So the people down here that were working, and mind you, this is in 87, they were making $7, $9, $12, $15 an hour. If they had a associate's degree, they were making $25 an hour.
Okay.
Working on their bachelor's, they were making $25, $35, $40 an hour. Master's degree, $60 and $75 per hour.
Wow.
So I was like, damn. Okay, so he's talking about this is their work. They're selling crack, and pills or whatever it was.
Right.
And the white people were out there, and I was raising hell about, y'all got all white people and 2 or 3 Asians. And our Black people, we need some Black folks down here. This is not acceptable.
Right.
It was like, we are so sick of you. So I was like, well, yeah.
On our ground.
Yeah, we need some Black folks. I need some Black people to be down here so I can find out what y'all. So then they did hire 3 Black people from St. Louis.
3.
Out of
the city.
And they were just, some of them were just the long tubs, look like horses. Right. They had the long tubs of water. They were just washing the little artifacts and relics and putting numbers on the back of them or the front of them, and then in a plastic bag, and then put them in a log. Okay. I was like, you making $70 an hour? I'm in grad school. I was like, I'm gonna give damn. So then that's where the goal came from. Wow. The division of job creation to help cut down on crime, violence, and senseless homicide. Because a lot of people that have to help with this project, they're dead, and some of them were young. One guy, he helped with a lot of different things. He started out selling dope, then he became a crack addict, and then a boofer. There's
differences, right?
Yes, there's different layers. But he had this idea. Beautiful heart, beautiful mother was a supervisor at General Motors. Okay. So his thing was like in the Kansas City Star on Sunday paper, they used to have the TV weekly guide, and on the back it'd have like a house, how it looked now, and then before and after. Right. So make people bring a camera and take pictures so they can see what it looks like now. Right. And then after, he was all hyped about this. He had to do petitions and everything. We generated over 4,000 signatures for people to do the acquisition feasibility study, bringing the Interior Department when they were going to make it a toxic waste dump. And he helped with that, And they ruled out 2,000 of them were flushed because they weren't. That's why I have a hard time understanding a lot of, especially from our people. They had all these regulations on us. They had to be registered certified voters, and their ID had to be current. And they went through all these signatures, and they had to be from across the entire state of Kansas. It couldn't just be from Wyandotte County.
So they were doing everything they could to thwart the effort.
Yes, and we had to have 1,000 signatures. But when I first started with this, because I had done another project, Best of Black Artistry in the Capitol Rotunda, and they were just not, it was like, we changed the name to it. I was like, change this what? They said Best of Artistry. I was like, well, no, this is for the Black folks. We have so much talent. We need to be. They were having the 125th anniversary of the state, and I was just like, I got a $400,000 budget. We just need a little because the artists need to be paid. Definitely. Okay, and so they were like, no, we don't have nothing. But I have found out that there were so many mechanisms behind the scenes, and even on one of my occasions to be there and speak, I went to a Kansas State Historic Society meeting just to see, just to sit in. Because I was ignorant.
Right.
I'm still learning. And they only require 10 signatures. Up until we did what we did in 88. They went before the legislature and took it to 1,000 signatures, and they had to be from all over the state.
Let me ask you this, but I want to go back.
I'm sorry.
It's good. I want to digress to something you mentioned, and I found it a very important point. 2 points. One, you said that this site has more interest to just citizens of Kansas.
The Interior Department was perfect.
Right. So I wanted to know what the interest was, and then the connection to the Underground Railroad. So what interest does this location have outside of this particular region, in this area particularly? And then how is it connected to the Underground Railroad?
Wow. So can you say that again?
Well, let's go to the first
one.
Let me go back. So talk about the Underground Railroad connection with Quindaro. Let's talk about that first. I think that history builds up to the interest that becomes Quindaro
and the ruins of what was once established. So the Underground Railroad first. What is the connection to the Underground Railroad in this specific location we're standing on right now?
Well, they wanted you know, the variety of different historic Kansas historic quarterlies, and then you have oral traditional history from some of the older Blacks, and then we have about 23 of them that were recorded by the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Okay.
They haven't been transcribed, but that was a grant through the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Mm-hmm.
And the summer scholars program, we had scholars from all over the world, mostly Black and Africa and the South America, some from the Caribbean. They went and interviewed a lot of them. But anyway, so it was coming to a point of how Kansas is going to enter the Union as a pro-Union or a pro-Confederate.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Border Ruffians, the Confederate, would come over from Missouri, neighboring Missouri, and pretend like they were residents in Quindaro and Wyandotte County, and would manipulate the vote and vote in favor of slavery. Mm-hmm. And Clarina Iris Nichols, she was an icon in the women's suffrage movement. She shouldn't have been a publisher, the first publisher. She turned out to be the first publisher female in the United States who was coming from the East Coast. Anyway, she would go to the Kansas Constitutional Convention meetings and pretend to be spinning and knitting and so forth, but she was taking detailed notes, and then she would take those notes and send them back to the telegraph out east and tell them they need to send more money, and they need to send money quick. More money and more people quick, because these people were overthrowing the election. And there was like 4 or 5 different Kansas constitutions on whether we would be pro-state, pro-slavery, yes,
right,
yes,
free state.
So when they finally agreed that Kansas was going to join the Union as a free state, I believe it was in '59, but all those discussions leading into it, and they started this. You know, there's so many contradictions in the books. They'll say 1857, but the adrenaline, you know, was built up, you know, when they had the dedication. So there had to be work prior to, and then securing the property and working with the Delaware, the Shawnee tribe, and so as soon as Kansas hoisted the flag and joined the Union as a pro-Union, then that offset the scales of whether the country was going to stay
agricultural.
No, well, we're going to go to like South Africa, or whether we're going to have a more inclusive, because, you know, people don't understand that the African American population at that particular time were heavily involved with the Republican Party, because the Whig Party was involved with the enslavement and stronghold with that. And, you know, you get into all the dynamics of the finite of picking up the magnifying glass on all that movement. It just gets to be so chaotic. But when the women's suffrage movement were here, they broke federal law in teaching the fugitives to do reading, writing, arithmetic, because they were so convinced that freedom would come, and that they, in order to be competitive in a capitalist society, they would have to be well trained in terms of their learning and free thinking.
Education.
And so I didn't answer your question, but there's so many dynamics.
It leads up to it.
If you on that side of the river, you have Missouri Parkville, and on this side was considered holy ground. Once they could get to Quindaro, it was considered holy ground. And if the foliage wasn't like it is, there's a huge, like 17 by 15.
No, make sure you can get heard.
17 by 15 foot ice house where they would, by mule, donkey, or oxen, would haul ice out of the Missouri River to have refrigeration, because there was no refrigeration.
Right, not at that time.
And
wow,
there you had the male population. Okay, so that was 59. And
so what year was Quindaro established?
They say 1857. Then you see some stuff where people were going through what they do in like 1855, 1853, you know.
More fledgling? Was it more fledgling, like the build up to the actual establishment?
They were trying to figure out exactly what part they were gonna decide to acquisition and secure the 780 acres, because it's 9 square miles. Wow. It went from 18th Street in the Missouri River to 42nd Street in the Missouri River to 42nd and Perlo Parkway to 18th and Perlo Parkway.
Wow.
780 acres.
All that is Quindaro.
The original,
at one point in time, right.
The only part that I was basically pretty much allowed to work on was the area that they were going to make this the dump.
This area here?
Because the people from the leadership in the church and the city were willing to make money because they needed to have some, they were growing.
And this is where freedom was actually grabbed here, coming across the river.
Yeah.
So this is the launching point of pretty much Quindaro. Would you say that?
Yeah, this would be the epicenter because this was a place called Kansas.
Let me show you all this again.
KANCA Avenue.
So just beyond this foliage here, you can see there's a river, okay? And the river was where our ancestors would cross from Missouri to Kansas to get their freedom. And they would do that particularly during the winter months, correct?
You know,
whenever really.
That's when it was kind of like they had the ice. But one of the, we had Dr. Charles Block from Temple University who came here. He did an article on the Underground Railroad through National Geographic. And one of the people helping us at the time, who still does, he saw the article and he was like, we need to try to see if we can get this guy, Dr. Charles Blocks, in here. So, yeah. And so he did come. And he wore dress shoes and was dressed real nice. He said, I'm not able to do the tour. But he knew about Quindaro. He had it in his original article for National Geographic. But when you go to write, and then you end up on the editing floor. So it ended on the editing floor. But he was familiar, but one of my consultants, who, like I said, he died in 91 when he was 91 years old. He was a Tuskegee Airman mechanic, and they allowed him to fly planes home to Kansas City on the weekend.
Wow.
And his father was Corvine Patterson. His grandfather was Corvine Patterson, who was an Oberlin College graduate. And he said when he would fly into Kansas City to be with his wife and children, that when he got to this area, the Missouri River was shaped like, they could change the pathway of the river. Did you know that, right? The Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay,
they can change. When they would fly, he said that it was just like, it was the silhouette of a human forehead and a nostril and chin, mouth. And right there at the nose was these archaeological foundations that you can see from an aerial perspective, as if God had breathed freedom right into the centermost part of the country. Wow. So somebody who would be flying would be able to
see that, right? That's an aerial view.
Yeah. So and maybe I always thought it was very historic. But anyway, he helped a lot. He died in 91. When he was 91, like less than 10 days after we won the court lawsuit, he felt like he could rest there.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful.
And but when we went down here in '88 for the Juneteenth event, it was we had a couple of hundreds of people, several hundreds, and doing the regular tour, and you can see the archaeological, because they were doing archaeological salvage. Yeah, they were preparing it for a dump. They just did an archaeological salvage program.
Wow.
And we didn't have this platform, but anyway, we got, he said, we need to go this way. And I was like, I never go up there. He said, we're going this way. So he took us underneath the overhead, what is now the railroad. That was a whole nother historic angle, the Battle of the Spurs, while they didn't want the railroad to come through here. But anyway, we went underneath this little thing and walked over to the river. And, he said, I thought I would never get to see old Quindaro down here again. And there's a curvature in the ground, that you can actually stand on. And I was, I'm up here and I'm like, okay. And then he just leaned up against the tree and started weeping. And I was just like, oh my God, he didn't got sick because it was, Juneteenth in '88. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
And I said, are you okay? He's like, yes. He said, just be quiet. And, people got really, really quiet. So he said, right here, you need to always stop and pay homage to the slave women and children that were sunk by that cannon blast in August of 1859. And I was like, oh, wow. Says, we need to stop and pay homage to them. And he said, he cried. And I was just like, oh my God. So then I went and put it in the paper. And so the lady that had my articles in the copy, she said, you need to find an article so we can verify. Yeah. So then I had the other white lady. When I said my article, I meant in the KUAW paper. Miss Ross, who was Black, graduate of KU. Her father was a music instructor here at Western University.
Okay.
And so there were articles about the cannon blast of the fugitive, and then the whole scenario, the women and children were escaping up out of Missouri, and the Border Reference and Confederates, whatever they call it, the staff for the plantations, they were like, all these people were disappearing. And then they found out they were running, so they started coming after them in their horses and coming after them and started shooting into there. And the children and the women just kept running, and they just disappeared. And there they are. And they had gotten on a big barge. And by that time, they were able to bring a cannon. They got a cannon and one blast, and none survived. So we have a moment of silence. Wow. And then I was able to put it in the file paper because I was able to find the article.
Verified.
Yes. And there were other articles. And the Platte or Clay County State Historic Society were doing an evaluation, archaeological evaluation, to see if they could find any documents or artifacts or relics from that time frame. And I don't know where that went to, because we had so much. Instead of people actually, when I was trying to say, people say they want to help, but then when it comes to really help, they don't want to help where we really need help. They want to come with all these divisive, diversionary sidebar. You know, this is like when the guy was saying, you can't prove that there were any Union Army colored troops there. I was like, they were recruited, quartered, camped, mustered, and trained, right? Because they talked about them in the records that y'all can bring the N-word and the colored up in here, but they can't stay overnight here in Leavenworth. They didn't want to enforce Scott. It was, like, people want to make it sound like they just rolled right. They didn't. No. So they were, right here. They even burnt Quindale down twice. The Union Army.
The Union Army.
Who they were supposedly enlisted with. And when I read across those materials, I was asking Mr. Gayton, how do we handle that in the future? The Union burning down the buildings. He said, well, you got to understand they were just human beings, and they had went out to war, and they were celebrating, and they were drinking, no doubt, and it just got out of control. And by the time they woke up, the place was on fire. Wow. I said, okay. He said, but they were humans. Yeah. So I was like, they
had a little something in their heart too, though.
So
that's interesting. That's very interesting.
But anyway, this curvature on the ground, there are articles in the public library where a post office employee actually went to the inside of this curvature, and it was tall enough to walk a donkey, mule, or oxen, but not tall enough to ride. And then the older people said that when they got all the way up along the Missouri River, you could go underground in this tunnel, and there was a church there, Bell Chapel or something, Bell Temple, and they would light a lantern if it was safe for them to come out, and then there would be no lantern. If there wasn't no lantern lit, that meant keep your behinds wherever you were until another day. Y'all stay underground or stay inside the tunnel because it's not safe, even in Leavenworth. So no matter, even they were basically, this was holy ground for them. And later on, people call it sacred space. But we've gone through all of this with all the titling. I try to follow the pathway criteria for Nicodemus, because they have
Nicodemus, Kansas, for those who may not know.
Yeah, they have
another free black town.
Yeah, they have all the, they have the National Register, the National Historic Landmark, the National Park, the National Monument. And I know them from college days. And maybe when I was a kid, we used to go down there every summer from the summer camp through Frenzy Gates in Diamond Grove, Missouri. So, because of their success, I try to, I keep them posted on what we're doing. And then when I get to see them, then they're like, I would do this differently. But they don't have the problem we do in Kansas City, because Kansas City has more people. Okay. And the more people you get, the
more complicated. They get more people, more numbers. Let's go and start walking on back, man, as we wrap this up. But I just wanted you all to take a look at this entry point here. This is a very significant historical landmark, but the interest, what interest does Quindaro pose for others outside of this particular area? I think that's the question that, I wanted to ask part two.
What interest does it pose for other people outside the country?
Yeah, because you mentioned
this community.
Yes, sir, because you had talked about, that was something that I guess the National Registry wanted to.
The National Historic Landmark.
Right, so they wanted to verify why this place should be preserved. Like what did you present in your argument for that particular, interest to be recognized?
Well, they were the first to serve and first to die in the American Civil War. Okay. And after they conquered the Toothman Farm in Butler, Missouri, Bates County, they renamed it Fort Africa. And they won 2 Emmys for
right here, Fort Africa.
No, in Butler, Missouri.
Butler, Missouri.
From up out of here.
Okay. Oh. I'm gonna walk.
And part of the problem with is that the first Kansas color weren't from here. They were from Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas.
Okay.
And we don't have a mark or anything for them. And it just doesn't seem to be a top drawer issue.
Mm-hmm.
But the science of race relations sensitivity training, one of my late aunts,
diversity, what they equality
like,
and inclusion.
She's like, you can, yeah, she's like, she didn't give a damn about racist or racism. Show her the budget and the policy that lets our people fit in.
Okay.
We don't have to worry about nobody asking for no apology and begging for them not to be a racist. Just where's the budget?
Right.
And where's the policy for our people?
Okay.
So I kind of use that as an example.
Yeah. But
right now, everybody wants to, we need to apologize and change history. There's even people that want to change the name of the site.
Really?
Right now.
Wow.
They want to change it to West University Association of 55th District of the AME Church. I'm like, it's noted as the Quindale ruins, the Quindale town site.
Right, history, the history of it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, like I said, people say they want to help and even have letters saying they want to help, then they want to change everything. And then we're right back to where we were.
Right.
You know.
Right. So where are we now with the preservation of this in terms of making this a national historic landmark? Where is that process at as we speak?
Okay. It's been evaluated by scholars across the country, their private consultants, and their professional staff.
Okay.
The city is supposed to be expanding the boundaries of the National Historic Landmark.
Okay.
They requested that. And then they wanted to know, how is this important to people outside of that specific area?
Okay.
And
go to the statue.
The Vernon School. It was named after Bishop Vernon, the third Black Registrar of the United States Department of Treasury.
Wow.
You know, Bruce Blanche, he was the first African American known treasurer of the Secretary of the Department of Treasury.
Okay.
And trying to put that, you go through all these dynamics, but they centralized the banks to make sure they had enough money to win the war. The United States was in a difficult situation. They centralized the banks.
Okay. You want to stand in front of this for me, please?
Okay.
And just finish up there. They centralized the banks. You were saying to fund the war.
And Bishop Vernon was brought in, I guess, around the 20s or so, during just before the Depression era.
Is that this school here?
Yeah, that's the little.
So there's a school right here called the Vernon School.
And you know,
there's a Roosevelt effort.
Yes, the WPA. And you know, Black people built Wyandotte County Lake. And Black people built Big 11. But it just seems as though the ability for people to see you can't do race relation sensitivity training through a PowerPoint and through another book and another 2 or 3 days. But people need to be able to sweat during the day and earn a legal paycheck every week, every 2 weeks. And other people that have skills in other things that may not be so savvy or palatable in the mainstream eyes, if they were provided the legal platforms on how to do exactly what you do with your sales and inventory with something legitimate, then we can help hopefully cut down on crime and violence. Does that not
no,
make sense?
Definitely. I mean, that's empowerment. You know, when you have economic empowerment, you have, you know, collective work and responsibility. All these principles go into the reduction of the systematic and systemic, you know, problems that we're facing.
We want to work with the regional universities, including Haskell's Indian Nations University in Lawrence and then Lincoln. And then they have this thing called Langston University.
Right.
Who's a brother of Charles Langston, the first president of Quindale Freeman
So
University.
many just elements right
and he
there.
became the first Black congressman
Mm.
out of Virginia or Maryland or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lincoln University, the people that helped found Quindale, Moses Dixon, he was a freed Black man. He was a free Black Mason. A lot of people don't like the Masons. They say, oh, the Masons, this Masons, that.
Right.
But the Black Masons did
Prince Hall.
They did a lot of things to elevate the
conditions
longevity of our people.
Right.
Moses Dixon was a free Black man. And he would go through the plantations in Missouri and say, freedom train coming. And he'd give him the day and the time, tell him where to meet him. He wasn't playing. I mean, your ass better be there to meet him.
Right.
And because he was too old to join the Union Army, but he would
go into Missouri.
He was over there in Missouri. He would smash them into his little hideaway cabins and wagons and bring them over here. And next thing you know, he was making them join the Union Army.
That's bold.
So,
That's
Moses,
very bold.
and then he got tired of this right here and went helped to open up a thing called Lincoln University. So
in Missouri,
they're still standing. So
right.
that their whole thing was education,
crucial,
liberty.
right.
Being able to sustain yourself.
Business.
So going back through trying to prepare all these documents for the different entities and institutions has helped to I'm learning so much all the time.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like this ought to be able to happen in our lifetime. They're saying now this should take another 25 to 30 years.
So what can
we
do?
Wow.
What can we do to support the effort of making this more to expedite the process, to get it, recognized nationally? Because I think this is a hidden jewel, in the center of this country, as relates to what African Americans, quote unquote, have done to advance ourselves. This is something that I don't think we know in the area, but even us in the area don't really take pride in this particular landmark, right? In the history that has gone into this. What can we do to help this area to become, more recognized, even on the national level? Like what's the solution? What solutions can we offer for that?
People can get in touch with their congressperson.
Okay.
And tell them they can need to get behind. Okay, the bill passed in the U.S. Senate for the African burial ground. Okay. So they're going to fix up the older, abandoned Black cemeteries.
Right. Yeah.
And we haven't even had a committee hearing in our Congress. So people can get in touch with their Congress people, because we have the cemetery over here with Black people, turn of the century, free and enslaved, Union Army, up to Vietnam War, and then other families, just families.
Right. In the burial ground.
And some of them just, we need that fixed. But the language of asking the Congress people and their staffs, why haven't they made the Interior Department help us get this National Historic Landmark designation?
So get in touch with our Congress people. The Kansas,
Missouri, we're all over the country actually. Because this
is
international site. That's part of the problem. You have the French Canadian Wyandotte Indians out of Canada. You have the New England Immigrant Aid Society abolitionists. You have the African fugitives on their journey to freedom. That's international.
Truly.
So
perspective.
Trying to explain that to the people that run City Hall and the other people up at Topeka.
Right.
Because they try to act like, well, but I try to tell myself, if I was white, or if the site was all white, or we were any race of people other than who we are, they would have been jumped on it and been more conciliatory and more progressive. But because of their heart and their mind, they've been trained to be unkind. And I don't think that they mean to be.
Right.
But they're just unkind.
It's history.
Because I've had Black people that were other Black people. You need to go see them. They're in the hospital, the nursing home, and they were crying Quindale, in their passing, because it meant that much to them, like as a sacred space. And I thank you so much for the interview.
No doubt.
And the opportunity.
Let's take a look at this last plaque, man, and then just
full of inaccuracies.
That's unfortunate. But just to let you all see, this is something that is very important in African American history, and I want to thank Brother Robinson for agreeing to come out today. We got a good break in this weather because it's been blazing, man. It's a beautiful day out here today. But I want to thank the listeners and the viewers for tuning in with us today. It's been, very informational for me. I've been here a couple times, but I definitely wanted to bring this back into the forefront of our minds through shifting paradigms, because this is a paradigm that we definitely want to remember in terms of our African American history and the efforts that we've made to to advance ourselves and to get better. You know, even at a time like today when we're still struggling from so many maladies that are vestiges of our enslavement. You know, this is something that we can reflect on, remember, you know, a Sankofa process, go back and fetch it to bring it to the present, you know. And so, man, thank you again for coming out. This has been powerful. This is B. Michael with Shifting Paradigms. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Always want to shout out KUAW, Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom Radio, the Black Family Technology Awareness Association, Baba G. Walker for always keeping it up and holding it down on the soundboard. This is B. Michael with Shifting Paradigms. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Signing off. Peace and power.
All right.